Once you become rich, you continue to be rich unless you sort of, throw away your money in useless things. To sort of relate it to an Indian context, an excellent way to follow this principle in India is to invest in the public provident fund. Investing is not a 100-meter sprint. It is a 42-kilometer marathon. And you have to and a marathon cannot be run at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. So you have to pace yourself, do nothing principle. Because what will happen is there is so much noise around the entire investing thing. So there is noise on TV, there is noise on, in newspapers, there is noise in digital medium, now there is noise through financial influencers. So it is very difficult to remain sane when the entire world around you is going mad. Good investing should be very boring. The moment you are getting a thrill out of it, there is something not right about it.
When did you first discover Morgan Housel and why do you like him so much?
I think this was 2020 when his book, The Psychology of Money, came out. I don't know how I ended up reading the book, but I did. And I quite liked the fact that someone had written a book on money without essentially getting into terms like stock market and SIP and normally what happens is when anyone writes a book on personal finance, it tends to get a little too technical without essentially talking about the broader philosophy of personal finance, the broader philosophy behind saving. So savings, more than being a financial thing, are essentially, or investing or personal finance or whatever you might want to call it, they're more a psychological thing. And it's the psychological side which interests me, but does not get talked about enough. So which is why I ended up, reading The Psychology of Money, because, I had no idea who the guy was. But the title I sort of found quite fascinating. And then his second book came out, same as ever, which was not a book on money, but that also had quite a few money lessons. So that's how I essentially discovered the guy.
Here we begin. So what do you mean when you say the Warren Buffett principle?
Okay, so this is something that Housel talks about. See, again, he could have simply said the power of compounding, which, every second or third personal finance article talks about. But then, if you say power of compounding, you're like, who's going to read? So what the story that he uses to essentially bring forward the point about the power of compounding is that of Warren Buffett. And so I think this is there in his first book, Psychology of Money, wherein he says that Warren Buffett made a bulk of his money post turning 50. Okay. So I think the numbers he uses is that, and this is 2020. So probably this would probably be 2019 numbers or whatever. That's not important. What is important is the principle behind the story. So Warren Buffett at that point of time was worth around 84.5 billion or some such large number. And 84.2 billion of that was made after he turned 50. Okay? So this is the power of compounding. Now, what does it mean in very simple terms? It essentially means that, let's say you have 1 lakh rupees, okay? And you invest that in a fixed deposit, a simple fixed deposit, total no-brainer. That at this point of time would probably give you a return of 7.5% per year, 7%. So that's 7,000 rupees. But let's say you have 10 lakh rupees. So 10 lakh, immediately the 7% on that would be 70,000. So what happens? So essentially, what happens is that as your corpus grows over the years and reaches a certain size in a certain number of years, then the real power of compounding starts coming in, because your money starts growing by huge amounts in absolute terms. So as I said, at 1 lakh, it will be 7,000 rupees, but at 10 lakhs, it will be 70,000 rupees. At 1 crore, it will be 7 lakh rupees. Okay. So which is why, the broader lesson here is that, which is why the rich, once you become rich, you continue to be rich, unless you sort of, throw away your money in useless things. So again, to sort of relate it to an Indian context, an excellent way to follow this principle in India is to invest in the public provident fund. I mean, right now you do 1,50,000 rupees every year, and it gives you 7.1% interest every year, and your the amount at maturity is tax-free. So it effectively means around 10% return guaranteed by the government of India. So it's a total no-brainer. But still, a lot of people don't do it. So you will end up. I don't remember the exact numbers, but so you can keep extending. It's I think initially for a period of 15 to 16 years, and then you can keep extending it by a period of 5 years. At the end of 30 years, you can end up with some 1.6, 1.7 crore, which is for a totally automated investing strategy where you do not have to use your brains at all, a pretty good amount of money. So which is what the Warren Buffett principle is basically about. So you don't have to necessarily, what I'm trying to say is invest in stocks. You can even earn slightly lower returns, but of course in a way guaranteed returns, and follow the Warren Buffett.
Instead of focusing too much on earning extra return, you can focus on maximizing.
Exactly. Basically, investing is not a 100-meter sprint. It is a 42-kilometer marathon. And you have to, and a marathon cannot be run at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. So you have to pace yourself.
Vivek, do you remember the first story in the Psychology of Money book? I think it's about this guy who is a janitor, a philanthropist, and a millionaire.
Oh yes, of course. So there was this guy who kept buying stocks, and I don't remember his name. When he died, his portfolio was worth millions of dollars. So he just kept buying and holding on to what he had. So that is it's easy to talk about this, but it is very difficult to continue holding on to what you have invested in.
Coming to the second money lesson, it's you titled it the do nothing principle.
Yeah.
So what does it mean? You do nothing.
So basically, so let's talk about fund managers. Okay, so fund managers in India have this. At least they used to until a few years back. They would tell you that Sensex has given you a return of 18% per year since 1979, or 19%. Depending on their mood, they would use any figure from 17 to 19% would be used. And obviously, they were not wrong about it. They're right. But what they did not tell us was that a bulk of these returns were earned up until 1992. When most of us weren't around investing in the stock market, right? If you look at Sensex returns from 1992 onwards, and I haven't checked the number in a year and a half, but from 1992 or a 3-decade period, the Sensex returns were around 9% per year. Okay, you add dividend yield of 1.5%, it's 10.5%. So obviously, in 1992, the markets were at a peak. So I'm talking from a peak level, right? So which is also not correct. So the number I like to look at is you have the Nifty total return index data, which essentially takes the dividends of stocks which constitute the Nifty 50 index into account as well. So that data is available from 1999, June 30th, 1999. So the returns on that are around 13% per year. Okay, so 13% per year is a fantastic number. Your money doubles in 5 to 6 years, 5.5 years. So the do nothing principle essentially is to just invest in, these Nifty 50 stocks. Basically invest in an index fund or an exchange traded fund, and do it regularly, month in, month out, or whenever you have some amount of money coming in. And just, it's like, you're too young to remember this. There used to be this old Hero Honda ad, which would go fill it, shut it, forget it. This is exactly like that. That's the do nothing principle. Because what will happen is, but then, it's very difficult because there is so much noise around the entire investing thing. So there is noise on TV, there is noise on, in newspapers, there is noise in digital medium, now there is noise through financial influencers. So it is very difficult to remain sane when the entire world around you is going mad, or at least seems to be going mad. So which is why what I said. So see, good investing should be very boring. The moment you are getting a thrill out of it, there is something not right about it. Which is why Warren Buffett also says, that people should stick to investing in index funds. So I mean, if you find index funds extremely boring, then at least stick to investing in diversified equity mutual funds. So you can do a large cap fund, a mid cap fund, and a small cap fund, and a gold ETF, and you're done. And you can look at it a couple every 2 years and see. Also, I find in mutual funds, people chase short-term performance, which is a very stupid thing to do because short-term performance keeps changing. If you look at, and I haven't done this in many years, but when I used to look at mutual fund data very carefully, the 1 year top performers would keep changing. But if you looked at, funds which did well over a period of 5 years, that would be a more stable sample.
Moving on to the next money lesson, you have titled it "How Not to Take Cues from Others."
So this is again, because there is so much noise related to investing at, around us at any point of time. So it is, again, so basically it goes back to, investing in the broader index and sticking to that. But the moment if you sort of try getting influenced by the world around you will end up doing things which are popular at that point of time, which might work. If you had, people who have bet their lives on small cap stocks in the last few years have done extremely well for themselves. But the point again is that, when you start betting on something, you don't know whether that bet will continue to be right in the future as well. So which is why, diversification is, I think, the most important investing principle. And, as we were discussing before we started recording this, in the last few years, anyone who has said this has looked very stupid because it's concentrated portfolios which have done well. But then to sort of give you a few examples, you look at small cap stocks, the BSE small cap index, which has, I think more than 900 stocks, essentially reached a high, its then high in early 2008. It only crossed that high again in March 2017, 9 years. The same with the BSE PSU index. The high that it reached in 2008 was crossed only in 2023. So once you start taking these factors into account, you should generally be avoiding noise. Now, if you don't want to avoid noise, and it might just make some sense to have a small part of your portfolio playing on the noise as well. But you can't bet your life on it. So to give
Do you have a portfolio where you place these small bets according to
I'm not good at it yet. I have a very small stocks portfolio, but it is largely limited to stuff I think I understand. So, but most of the money is as of now is in mutual funds and in fixed deposits. So.
The next one is an interesting one, and you have titled it "Risk is what you don't see coming." So can you please explain?
See, it's again, when you're going with the flow. See, also let me give you an example. So there used to be this philosopher called Bertrand Russell. So Bertrand Russell had this very interesting chicken analogy. Okay, so let's say you're a farmer and you are essentially farming chickens. You're probably the most important job that you would do is to feed the chicken at irregular intervals at every day. Now think from the point of view of the chicken. Okay, now obviously no one's ever been able to ask the chicken what he's thinking about it, but think for a moment how the chicken looks at the world that he exists in. He knows that, there is this guy who will probably come and keep feeding me at a given point of time, every day. Now, in his head, he obviously assumes that this is something that is likely to continue. So essentially, the human mind also works like that. We assume that our short-term circumstances will continue. And that is how things usually are, most of the time. But then one fine day, the farmer essentially cuts the chicken because he's ultimately, that chicken is food on someone else's plate. That is how it is meant to be, right? So the chicken's assumption goes all wrong. So risk is again something that you do not see coming, okay? So similarly, when, I can give you an example from 2008. I remember it was a Monday and we were in office having our weekly meeting. During the course of that meeting, the Sensex fell by 10%. Okay? 10%, okay, on a given day, and then the index had to shut down for some time, and all that happened. Now, obviously, when nobody had when that morning started, nobody really knew that Sensex is going to fall by 10% today, right? So that risk nobody saw coming. So, which is why, as Mahendra Singh Dhoni keeps saying, it is important to control the controllables. You can only control what you can control. There is no point in trying to control what you cannot control. So controlling the controllables in this case means that you essentially, as I said, diversify. You don't bet your life on one stock or one mutual fund or one asset class or whatever is the flavor of the season. Now, the point again is that, there are people who may go absolutely against this and do well. All I'm trying to say is that since we cannot forecast, since we do not know what the future holds for us, so which is why we have to control the controllables.
The fifth point is the importance of cash.
So it's all again linked, So we live in an era where money has been multiplying at a very fast rate. So in this era, trying to tell people that you should have money in fixed deposits it again sounds quite stupid. But then, as I said, this is again controlling the controllables. If you cannot see the future, you obviously have to be in a position where some of your money is sort of stored away, so that if you were to enter a scenario of financial emergency, you have money to get around. At the beginning of COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs, right? And a lot of youngsters who were starting off did not have any savings. Okay, now, it might just be because they were starting off, or they might have been a year or two old in the profession that they were in and would have probably bought an Apple iPhone from their first salary and then gone on a holiday and stuff like that. Now, what that did was obviously that it put those people in a precarious position. Now, the second thing that happens is, money in the bank essentially helps you negotiate better. Now, what do I mean by that? It essentially means, let's say you lose your job, and if you have savings, let's say a year's saving or maybe even more than that in your bank, in a fixed deposit or even in a normal savings bank account, you do not take on every trashy job that is offered to you. You are in a position to negotiate because you know that you have money to fall back upon. Or similarly, let's say you have home loan EMIs going on, right? A lot of people have, middle class people have home loan EMIs going on. And if you lose a job at, somewhere, and it does happen these days, right? Job losses are pretty normal. So how do you continue paying the EMI? You have to have some money stored away somewhere. So which is why it is important to sort of, again, as I said, it is important to be boring and have a part of your portfolio, obviously in fixed deposit. Now that obviously the proportion depends on your individual scenario in life, whether you have, your parents are dependent on you, whether your spouse is dependent on you, whether you have home loan EMIs, kids, what are the kind of expenses kids have. So it is an individual thing, but life becomes simpler, though less exciting if you have money stored away in a simple bank account.
So folks who are watching this video, we still have 5 more lessons, but yeah, that's topic for another day, I suppose. Sure. Thank you so much, Vivek, for coming.
Thanks for having me, Sachin.